Toto's not having it at all, is he? Not one bit. The boy who cried, Toto Wolff, says, "How dare you incite sabotage without evidence?" Critically aware of the downside ramifications for brand Mercedes, as always. Because again, this comes on the back of an email that has been sent to all the accredited journalists accusing Mercedes of ostensibly sabotaging the 7-time champion, one Sir Lewis Carl Davidson Hamilton. Oh, the humanity. This is bonkers now. It's gone DEFCON 5 or 1, hasn't it? Like, what are we doing here? Where Toto Wolff is calling police? Like, calling police on who or what and why? Of course, the answer to that question is because George Russell, first of his name, has been receiving a lot of online abuse courtesy of Cult LH, who can be extreme at times. And no one deserves that. We talked about Maximilian Verstappen and Kelly Piquet, online abuse in the F1 community. All of a sudden, over the past 24 months, since Abu Dhabi 21, is a thing of commonplace. And it shouldn't be like that, especially not at the hands of another driver, because I feel like Lewis has to take some responsibility in all of this. His comments over the past couple of Grand Prix, between free practice and qualifying, have indeed alluded to sabotage. He spoke, lest we forget, about the pace just disappearing. Something happens to it between free practice and qualifying. In free practice, it feels like the car's underneath me. It's the best car that I've ever driven. And then all of a sudden in qualifying, something happens to the pace. He spoke about the tyre temps not being where he anticipated them to be. And again, this kind of fans the flames. Now, listen, as of today, Lewis has come out and called for calm. Online abuse is never a good thing, eh? Internet warriors and big men in groups bring shame on all of us, not least the Lewis Hamilton fan base, but the F1 fan base more broadly. Why are we going out and abusing George Russell as if it's him that's done anything? Now, Lewis Hamilton fans and George Russell naysayers will say over the past couple of Grand Prix, the only reason why George was able to put it on pole was because he consulted the notes of Lewis Hamilton between free practice and qualifying, tinkered for his setup, indeed copied the 7-time champion. But is that not what F1 teams are supposed to do? Share information, learn incrementally with a view to underscore their durable competitive advantage if they have one. Is this not F1? Sharing notes, understanding amongst drivers and different sides of the same garage. You gotta tell me. I don't know. Non-rhetorical question. But yet and still, Toto Wolff has said, as at the team principal's press conference, that he's going full send on this because the accusations are serious. You will remember that in the email sent to the accredited F1 journalists, they were accused by Mercedes of being dangerous. Sending a driver out on lower temps than necessary is potentially life risking. You remember 30 years post Ayrton Senna's death that was part of his causality. That was one of the reasons, indeed, having trailed a safety car for the first time in F1 history. That was one of the reasons why Senna ultimately passed at Tamburello. Lower tyre temps, lower pressures, lower ride height. The car indeed bottomed out going into Tamburello. It is dangerous, and Toto Wolff isn't having that. As PR savvy and as brand awareness is his thing, Toto Wolff, team principal of Mercedes-Benz, is not having that, and he's called the police, saying at the team principal press conference this week that he was going full send on that. They were going to investigate IPs. He wants to get to the bottom of it because very heinous are those allegations. And this goes back to something that Baxter and Shez have been saying. Why would they want to sabotage George Russell or Lewis Hamilton even in favour of George Russell? Surely with sponsorship money on the line, billions in total, prize money, constructors, pride, egos, with all of the above, all of the aforementioned on the line, why then would Mercedes want to sabotage their crown, the crown in their jewel, the jewel in their crown as an asset? Why would they? Well, I've got a couple of reasons. Listen, and I want to distinguish between sabotage, aka DNFs, and sabotage, aka finish behind George Russell, because they are very different things. DNF, they won't want Lewis Hamilton to DNF. They're not going to do one of those. And listen, for the record, I don't think they are sabotaging Sir Lewis Hamilton. I think that's a reach at best. People who say that are falling foul of confirmation bias. Listen, if you have a point of view and you want to fit the evidence around that point of view, then you can always do that. You can find a way to make your argument stick. Said for a gazillion times, and I will say it again. On this channel, I will never ever sacrifice what I deem to be the objective truth at the altar of partisanship of any driver or any one viewpoint. The gift of a mind is that you can change it upon new evidence, surely. I can't be one-rooted. And some of you guys in the chat had said, oh, why can't you support Lewis Hamilton as a fellow person? Like, mate, I've got to look at the evidence on its merits. This is what we're supposed to do as human beings, right? As intelligent people. That's not to say that Lewis isn't being sabotaged, but as I look at it, I don't think so. I will be honest, we've gone through the evidence. Okay, so you want to say that he could have put on mediums. There were no mediums. You want to say he could have put on 3-lap old softs. That's a reach. I don't think that's doable. Not to go 13, 14 laps, 3-lap old soft tyres. What, to mean that that's quicker than fresh hards? Behave yourself. However, as far as the delineation between extents of sabotage, I still think, not that this is evidence or proof positive necessarily of any sort of foul play. However, in F1, there is always agency. And sometimes there will be conflicting priorities within a team. Here's what I mean by this. How, as at June of 2024, how will Toto Wolff not be incentivised to enable or facilitate George Russell to beat an outgoing Lewis Hamilton? Now, this isn't to say that he will have acted upon that, but why would he not? As an F1 team principal, managing a driver, one who's going to stay for next season, Charles, bloody Dora Charles, mate, you are far too kind, sir. Thank you so much, Charles. And not for the first time, mate. I'm going to tell you off, Charles. Thank you so much, chap. You're a legend. Oh, the humanity. What up, Pimp from California. Keep grinding for the avoidance of doubt content. Let's go, Charles. You're an absolute legend. Put some respect on Charles Edward's name. Do you know what I mean? Just a tad. You are a legend, sir. But I digress. Look, I think there is agency in F1. To separate agency from Formula One as a sporting enterprise is absolutely fool's gold. We would be barking up the wrong tree. Ergo, to say that Toto Wolff wouldn't be incentivised to maximise or optimise for George Russell's utility, first of his name, I think is nonsensical. That doesn't mean necessarily that Toto will be acting upon that or even sabotaging Lewis Hamilton, Sir Lewis Hamilton directly. I think you need to bake that into your decision making as you assess the evidence in kind. Now, Toto Wolff has phoned the police. Wants to find the IP addresses. And again, it is slanderous if indeed somebody is lying and claiming that they are Mercedes AMG Petronas team member, and they are not. Leveraging allegations at the team that they are sabotaging Lewis Hamilton without evidence, even if they are, then of course Toto Wolff is well within his rights to take that to the highest court court. Of course you have to fight that. This is the type of fight and vigour. This is the teeth that I've been expecting to see from Toto Wolff as a team principal of Mercedes AMG Petronas for the longest time. You remember in 2021 at Monza when Maximilian Verstappen parked his car on Sir Lewis Hamilton's head. It was then that I wanted to see this anger, this vigour, this go-get-ness from Toto Wolff, and I saw nothing of the sort. Here's why, as a Lewis Hamilton fan, I've been disappointed erstwhile, hitherto, season to date, at the hands of Toto Wolff's attitude, his laissez-faire. It's a shame that he couldn't be this animated and this active in the face of Michael Massey in 2021, just like Wheatley and Horner were. The legends of the Bulls that were red. That was the time to get animated, chap. Now he's good, but I feel like it's too little too late, if I'm honest, as a Sir Lewis Hamilton fan. What, now you want to get your elbows out, Toto, in the name of King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk, first of his name? Lewis Hamilton would be looking at this and be like, well, what happened to backing me? How comes you didn't go to bat for me at the time when I needed it most? And sometimes I've got to put on my Lewis Hamilton cap just a little bit. And in all this, you'll be looking at the action, the swiftness of the action that Toto Wolff has taken. And Lewis Hamilton's mind, of course, will be casting back to 2021. Toto Wolff, of course, you will have seen the pictures in the video, was celebrating that night the Constructors' Championship. I don't think that's very fair. Valtteri Bottas too, Sir Lewis's teammate, also not fair. Doing somersaults in a swimming pool after the polemic that was Abu Dhabi. How do you think Sir Lewis Hamilton felt then? Of course, he's the elder statesman. He needs less food and water than does a young George Russell, first of his name. That much is true. You can hear Frederick Vasseur talking about George Russell and how demanding he can be on the Beyond the Grid podcast. Frederick Vasseur, of course, having dealt with George Russell in feeder formula previously. Frederick Vasseur, to be precise, says that he can be equally demanding of himself. Sometimes, however, George Russell, first of his name, can take it too far as his asks, his requests, his demands, the extent of them and the frequency of them. You can hear it all the time on the radio. And this, I think, is why Toto Wolff is acting like this, with this swiftness, with this vigour and aggression. Full send, he said in the press conference. Call the police. That's an unequivocal response. Whereas Lewis, being the elder statesman, needs less water, no? True or false? He needs less stake holding, less hand holding. George Russell is the number one now. And this, to a certain extent, lends itself to the sabotaging thesis, right? And again, not sabotage, not DNF sabotage, not that type. This is different in extents and not kinds. However, if George and Lewis are on track at the same time, you better believe that Toto Wolff will be invested in George Russell outperforming Lewis Hamilton. Why would he not be? This is Formula One. It is only to be expected, chap. What are we doing, Michael? Surely at this stage, we know Formula One. Is it always cloaks and daggers? Well, not necessarily, but a formula, a sporting entity that's just readmitted Fabio Briatore for all of his previous indiscretions and skullduggery and crashgate and everything that came along with that. That tells you everything you need to know about Formula One and its ability to be skullduggerous all the bloody time. What are we doing, chat? This is nonsense. FP2. Oh, by the way, there is a race this weekend. If you didn't realise, Spanish Grand Prix, FP2 took place. And again, there is a reoccurring theme, right? Lewis Hamilton fastest on a 1:13.264. You can throw a blanket over the top 4 or 5. Carlos Sainz in second, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly, Maximilian Verstappen. Couple plot lines that we need to talk about. Lewis Hamilton, fastest in FP3. You guys will have watched by now the James Allison video, Beyond the Grid again, where he talks about the losing of pace that has characterised Lewis Hamilton's season between FP3 and quali. When asked about Lewis's comments that somehow the pace just fades, something happens to it. When asked to comment on that, James Allison alluded to the fact that this car and tyre combination is such that if you hustle the car along, if that's an inherent feature of your driving style, then you are liable to lose pace. This car and tyre combination doesn't react well to being hustled along. And that's techie, isn't it? Does that lend itself well or poorly to Lewis Hamilton's driving style? Last of the late break, as you can see on his telemetry each and every single time. Potentially. Changeable conditions between FP3 and Q1, 2 and 3. Is that the real source of the Lewis Hamilton sabotage? Well, we're going to see. We will see this weekend potentially, because there will be changing variables again. Track temperature and ambience, super hot today. Lewis was getting his soft compound runs in, of course, because this, as a race, is scheduled to be a 2-stopper. They need to know whether soft compound could come into play, whether they can run long enough on those red label soft compound tyres for them to become a feature during the race on Sunday. I'm so keen to see whether Mercedes are they back, or are they just back? Is this a true resurgence on the back of some of the updated parts that they are bringing? New floor that weighs less. Are they back? James Allison thinks not. He reckons that the Canadian Grand Prix is a circuit flattered to deceive, and that in Spain we will get a mean reversion of sorts, a resurgence of the bulls that are red, of course in the hands of one Maximilian Verstappen, potentially. Who knows? Really difficult to say for sure. And again, Maximilian Verstappen didn't exactly have a fantastic free practice session, did he? Getting techie. Again, a couple of different comments. He talked about instability. All of a sudden, it feels like that RB20 feels like we've changed the letters and the numbers right. For RCW and for 20C13, those comments about instability, understeer even on combined entry, those are very reminiscent of what Lewis and George have been complaining about for the past couple of years now. It is strange how tables can turn, and it's not lost on me. It feels more than coincidental that Adrian Newey has only just left that team now. It's very, very techie, this. No Carlos Sainz news just yet, by the way. Williams have denied all knowledge of any contract being signed. Carlos Sainz, though, had said you can expect news imminently. Hence why I was expecting something to come out over the course of this race weekend. Williams have denied all knowledge. Obviously, most F1 aficionados will concur that the options presented to one Carlos Sainz Jr. are twofold. The first, of course, being Williams, and the second, of course, being Sauber, soon to become Audi. I'm conflicted, chat. I really do not know which one of those contracts he needs to sign. I like Baxter's phraseology, however, his turn of phrase, that Carlos Sainz is a works team driver, and so why should he sign a contract with a customer team in Williams? I love that. It makes sense. However, I would argue the counter argument for Williams and for Audi. I don't even want to say it. I don't want to jinx it. It's too techie, this. Turns the tables, McLaren F1. It is techie. Do I say this on Williams? No, I'm not going to. I don't want to jinx it. Go on then, chap. Let's go back and forth. There's other stuff that I want to get to, but I want to talk to. Listen, you guys are legends. Proper legends. Charles, mate, honestly, far too kind, sir. Absolute legends. I've been wanting to say thank you to you for the longest time, man. That's too. I'm humbled. Listen, let me say for the avoidance of doubt before I get into this chat. You guys that come and watch me and listen to me rambling and engage me and tell me where I'm being stupid and fact check me and go back and forth and engage in this F1 mode of discourse each and every single time. I cannot say enough from the bottom of my heart. I'm infinitely grateful. I desperately want to do this thing listen, as long as I can breathe air and be the best that I can be. Hence why I try and learn and read and consume as much as I can. Watch all the podcasts so that you guys don't have to go and watch Beyond the Grid and dissect a James Allison interview and pick up all of the subliminals, etc., etc. That's the honest truth. Like I want to be as knowledgeable and as edifying an F1 content creator as is possible. I love the sport. I love interacting. I love the argument and discourse. Hence why I'm on here with you guys. Go on then. Let's talk, because you guys are legends. French Bonaparte says the main problem of Renault's successor and predecessors was that they brought some goats to Formula One like Prost, Schumacher, Fernando, but other than that, they never had a good scouting program. I think they lacked the infrastructure. I mean, the problem with Renault, so all right, lest we forget, Renault had a brilliant partnership with Williams back in the day, right, that yielded championships, 2 of in 92 and 93. But sometimes the game changes, right, and you're forced to evolve. And I think the game has passed Renault by. 2010 to 2013, I think Red Bull won those championships despite in hands of Sebastian Vettel, of course. But I think they won despite Renault, not because of them. You remember that those years, some of those Sebastian Vettel championships were blighted with reliability. The first one in particular was super close, right? 2012, I want to say, also close, because that Renault engine kept failing the balls that were red in the hands of both Vettel and Mark Webber. There's a famous story where Adrian Newey talks about in his book How to Build a Car, where he went to I think they went to the factory to discuss the reliability and how they could improve for it circa 2010. And they just learned, his takeaway, Adrian Newey's, from that meeting with the head honchos over at Renault, was just that they were just disengaged. They didn't want in. They didn't want to waste money on Formula One. It was a passion project of sorts almost. It was something that a previous senior stakeholder had wanted, but they weren't invested in it, and so they weren't about to throw money at an engine, an example. And I think that's where they are now, Alpine. They're not interested. A fish stinks from the head down, they say, when assessing and appraising an organisation. If the senior stakeholders are not invested in a project, then wrap it up. This is Formula One. You need everybody to be pulling in the same direction. Mention no names, The Wire, one of the best television programs that you will ever see, by the way. I allude, of course, to a famous scene when they're trying to get a table through a door. They've got 2 men on one end, 2 men on the other end, and they're both pushing against each other. That's a brilliant analogy for what Alpine have been doing all this time. They keep losing key personnel out the door. Otmar Saf now, what are we doing? How do you lose him? They've lost some brilliant engineers, and now they go and lose Esteban Ocon. Whatever you want to say about Esteban Ocon, he is far too aggressive sometimes, and he is very mistake prone. You can't make those mistakes that he's making, not with any sort of regularity, crashing into your teammate at Monaco, which as near as makes no difference is their home Grand Prix. That's chaos. That's unacceptable. But when you look at the head-to-head between Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon, who do you think is up? 6-2 at the last count, I think. And I mean, it would have been 7-2 had Alpine not bloody sabotaged him. He's a decent driver. And I say all that to say this. F1, the oldest story in F1 history is that people, that's how you get across the line, right? That's how you win championships. Attracting, and keeping really, really good people, market leading, because your success will be a function of them. True or false, chat? True or false? Oh, Briatore, is that where we're going, EC? What have you done? What have you done, Cam? Charles is a legend, is what I've done. I've done nothing. I'm just a noddy F1 mind that likes to do. You guys know me already. I can't take credit. Got to give everybody that's come on the channel, Peter Windsor and like, do you know what I mean? Baxty and shit. Like this channel and the mods, Mandler, Lazy, Jomo, Steve A. Like, I feel like this is like a victory lap of sorts. But no, listen, every time I come in here, I keep meaning to thank you guys vocally for watching, engaging, subscribing, donating, supporting, fact checking, disagreeing respectfully, telling me that I'm noddy and this is what, like, listen, humbled each and every single time. And when a legend like Charles goes and does that, like, I am speechless. Go on then, let's argue. Let's argue. What's with the cane hybrid? I've bought a pen. Do you want me to tell you a secret? I'll let you into this thing. I bought this pen. Something about having a pen in my hand makes me feel professorial. So when I get into these monologues, it's weird, clearly placebo. But when I get into these monologues, something about holding the pen in my hand makes me feel, I don't know, it mitigates for speech fallacy. Or speech disfluency even. I don't know. Somehow the ideas come better. You'll see. Check it out. Fact check me if you don't believe me. If you don't see me holding one of these, all of a sudden monologue, I start rambling and I'm not as structured as I should be. When I've got one of these in my hand, it just, I don't know. Hybrid. It just feels that way. Probably placebo, but I don't know. I've never lost an argument. I bat 1,000 with this in my hand. Mandler, was there anyone reporting about Crashgate when Nelson blew the whistle? Just curious. So it's a good question, Mandler. And I'm not sure my memory stretches that far back. They did report on it. So, but you'll remember though, there was a gap, right? The only reason why Nelson Piquet started talking about Crashgate is because Briatore sacked him. He would never have mentioned it. Had they kept him on, they would have, Crashgate would have been it would have been a myth and a legend. We would have never heard about it. Although when you check it out, when you look at it with like, when you take a step back and, do you know what I mean? Examine it in kind. The fact that he was practicing the crash at the same corner where it actually happened in the race, on the formation lap even, like, that tells you all you need to know, right? Like, what are we doing here? It's to your questioning, Mandel. No, they did report on it. I see where you're going with that. They did report. It was a big thing, wasn't it? Like, it was like sabotage. Oh, let's not go down that road again. I can't even talk about Mercedes again. I've rinsed it off. EC, what have you done, Cam? No, again, listen, I'm humbled. I do nothing apart from come on here as a noddy accountant and talk about Formula One and engage with you guys and have you guys correct me when I so frequently step out of line. EC, I've done nothing apart from be supported by legends like yourselves. You know what I mean? I am a vessel. McLaren F1 wise, I don't dislike Briatore just for his sheer controversy and black sheep status in the F1 world, not unlike Williams' story. Oh my gosh, is that where we're going? McLaren F1 race. Look, I get the point of view, and I wouldn't disagree as far. Listen, sometimes F1 can be a bit bland, a bit samey. The personalities in there, even when you watch the drivers' press conference, sometimes they're very cliche, and you kind of you cry out for more personality. And this harks back to the interview, right, that Carlos Sainz gave on the YouTube channel, the Nude Project Spanish. Brilliant, insightful. It was ridiculously good. Carlos Sainz gave the example of when he was growing up, that F1 drivers were like unattainable. They were like almost religious figures, divine almost in their stature and their countenance, you know, like there were these, you not only could you not access them, but you couldn't even conceive of being them. Carlos Sainz said in his interview, like they were just mythical creatures almost. And what Drive to Survive has done so brilliantly, bless you, Mrs. What Drive to Survive has done so brilliantly is, can you hear my wife sneezing? We are suffering from hay fever at the moment, is in the UK. Crazy. But what Drive to Survive, I digress, what Drive to Survive has done so brilliantly, Carlos Sainz says, is humanise these heroes, right? Show their vulnerabilities and their soft emotional underbellies. Get us closer to them. Help us understand their challenges. Charles Leclerc crashing all the bloody time. I exaggerate and embellish, but you understand the point. Lewis Hamilton's contract negotiations and the back and forth with Toto. Show us that. Bring us into that, Carlos was saying. That's what the gift is of Drive to Survivation. It's brought the fan base closer to the most material assets of the sport that is F1 though. I think he's nailed it there. I couldn't put it more succinctly and concisely than he has. That's the beauty of Drive to Survive. For all the naysayers want to say that it's bubblegum and they'll edit two clips together that are juxtaposed, that have no place being together, when, I don't know, Carlos Sainz and Lando Norris are arguing when they weren't really supposed to be arguing in real life. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just Jomo, you see that? Jomo gifting memberships out here. Legendary, man. I'm humbled. My eyes are watering, but if I were crying, it'd be you guys. It would be you guys making me cry. Thank you so much, Jamie. You're a legend. And I need to start typing. Listen, if you become a member, I'm going to start doing at least one written piece once a week. I will get onto that. But yeah, Carlos Sainz spoke brilliantly about the Drive to Survivation and needed to get closer to the drivers. They're not these mythical beasts. Although once upon a time in the Bernie Eccleston era, they were presented as such, these kind of like the untouchables. Senna with his like dashing good looks and his wavy hair. Prost, like, you know what I mean? Like a very different driver and a different sports personality, but nevertheless, just unreachable. There were no podcasts back in the day where you could hear like Prost like go off on like a 30-minute monologue and deep dive about, I don't know, having like mediums on one side and hards on the other side, as he did so brilliantly on the Nico Rosberg, or the chat with Nico Rosberg. Nothing like that existed back in the day. And again, that's the hole that Drive to Survivors sought to plug in a fashion that's timely, I think. Like, F1 doesn't do a good enough job of presenting and couching the F1 discussion in the image of the drivers. Too often you see Mohammed Ben Sulayem up front and say, like, I don't want to see your face, Mohammed. Like, bless you and whatever. You are trying. But I just, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, this is not about you, sir. I started a video when I talked about him saying hatred is a strong word, but in this case I will make an exception. Hyperbole, of course, but there is underlying truth in the statements that I don't want to see Mohammed Ben Sulayem. He's not F1. I feel like he should be a silent related party. You are there for your competence, sir. If you can't gauge, if you're unable to discern when a driver has false started because of a false transponder, then I don't want to see you, mate. You've got other fires to fight. I don't want to see you front and centre on the bloody podium, like keying with Lando and Loris because Lando and Max or Lewis or whoever, because they won. Mohammed Ben Sulayem, I feel like you've got other fires more pressing that warrant your attention. If everything was ticking along nicely in the background, like a swan like floating along the water, frantically peddling legs beneath the surface. If that's what was going on, that's what I think FIA, that's where I think they should be, if there was any semblance of competence to them. But that's not where they are. So when I see Mohammed Ben Sulayem, as disparate as the link between these two entities might be, it makes me feel like he's taking his hands off the steering wheel, right? And his hands at the moment, because of all the ineptitude and the incompetence and the false starts, what you can't pick up, and the 1,400 track infringements at Austria a couple of years ago that you were unable to police in real time, Abu Dhabi 21. Need I continue? Because of all of the aforementioned, I'm just keen to see, I would like to see an engaged Mohammed Ben Sulayem that wasn't all about the attention and the bluster. But I digress. Techie, EC, very techie. Sopranos #1. Oh my gosh, visually, is that where we're going? Can I be controversial for a second visual? I didn't really rate Sopranos that. It was good. It was good in parts. Look, let me not blaspheme. It's far too late in the stream to start blaspheming, eh? You hear that blaspheming door open, Cameron? Sopranos was not my favourite series. I don't think it was a patch on... I don't think it was a patch on The Wire. What, Avon and Stringer? You having a laugh? Oof, mate. That was like... the little quote that came up at the start to some like a cheeky subliminal synopsis of what was to come on the... Are you having a laugh, visual? No, visual. I will take that to... That's the hill that I will die on. No way can Sopranos overcome The Wire. Let me know in the chat what you think. What's the best series ever? And 10 points goes to the person that says Game of Thrones first. Jomo, you're a legend. Lazy. OVT sounds legit. OVT, what is that? OVT, we talking about rap or something? Sounds like OVO. They not like us. The like button is lonely. Lazy, you're a legend. Macon. And by the way, before I forget, for the avoidance of doubt, we'll be here 30 minutes before quali, live streaming of course, and 30 minutes before race. It's going to get techie. It's going to get techie. I'm optimistic. I'm hoping. If Mercedes are back, if McLaren are quick, all of the upgrades are coming. Ferrari, the only ones that feel like they're disappointing at the moment, notwithstanding the fact that they've expedited for all of their upgrades, right? They said that they were going to bring the big upgrade package in a couple of races' time at Silverstone. Not so. 80% of those have arrived at this Grand Prix, the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona. So why are they still so slow? Feels like they've lost their way a little bit, right? Commenting from afar, it looks like they're doing the random walk development journey that so typified Mercedes over the past 24, 36 months. Put this on, doesn't work, take it off. And then put another random thing on, doesn't work, take it off. And then they're just there. This in an ideal world, those who are working efficiently and have a line of trajectory it's incremental, isn't it? Put this on, put this on, there's like a very deliberate way of working. You test and learn and you continue going in the same direction. And it feels like Mercedes who have found their way, but in stark contrast to Scuderia Ferrari, they're kind of doing one of these. Bless them. Making a true leader doesn't need a spotlight. They should not have time for it if they are doing their job properly, in my humble opinion. Macon, I love that. Allah, one Jean Todd. I don't listen. You have different types of leader, right? There are flamboyant. Fabio Briatore is an example. Championship winning team principal, by the way, but very flamboyant and an habitual line stepper of sorts. So it's techie. Yeah, there's not you can't. I don't like. You're right, Macon, but I don't want to do the one size fits all thing. You can't apply one tape measure to different styles of leadership. I think it's all about effectiveness, right? And if Fabio can come on and provide some value to Alpine with his colourful style, notwithstanding it, then more power to him. Chat, like flipping Nora. Who am I to disagree with it if you can get it done? Win them some points. Candidate, hit the likes. Candidate, you're a legend. We need to catch up, Candidate, I'm telling you. I was speaking to our mutual friend the other day. Cannot believe it. The internet is a very, very strange place there. Emma, we just said that you should hit the like button. What's Emma saying? I just came. What are we talking about, sir? Emma, what we've talked about, you can rewind it. What we talked about Toto Wolff responding to the sabotage email. that of course went out to accredited F1 journalists, those who hold the permanent passes, who speculated on a video yesterday. Who could that have come from? As I read through it, it felt like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question, but it did feel like, as I was reading it, the turn of phrases and the verbiage wasn't unlike what I've heard many a Lewis Hamilton fan espouse on many occasions. For whatever it's worth, I don't know. It is that we love Lewis Hamilton. What? Going out verbatim, we love Lewis Hamilton and you're risking his life by sending him out on colder tights. That doesn't sound like a team member. That sounds like more like a fan. I don't know. For the avoidance of doubt, this is conjecture and speculation. But as I read the email, it sounded more like a fan than a team member, I'll be honest. But again, what does a fan sound like? And what does a team member sound like? I've just contradicted myself, right? There is no, you can't typecast these different roles. How do you know? Selvin, oh gosh, it's techie this. I need to read some of your comments. Kenny, according to the FIA, under the presidency, it says the president is the external face of the FIA, acting as the voice of the institution and taking part in all ceremonial events. So is that the podiums? Kenny, I did not realise that, mate. You know what? Oh, Kenny, maybe I need to have a word with myself then. If that's the role of the FIA president, then Mohammed Ben Sulayem is your guy. In my mind, though, Kenny, the role... Listen, I've talked about the scope and the remit of the FIA a couple of different times. For the avoidance of doubt, check this out. In my mind, not reading from any handbooks or any terms and definitions of the sporting code of conduct or the rules and regs as they're written, but in my mind, the scope of the FIA, and so by extension, the head of, is twofold. To ensure that the competitive landscape is level and fair first, and to safeguard for all of the participants of the formula over which they hold authority, principal among whom are, of course, Formula One. I'm not sure that that's commensurate, that to do that necessitates being on the podium. Potentially, maybe it does. But in my mind, to tick those two boxes, you would argue that I'm with Macon in this sense. I would argue that a Jean Todt figure, a quiet, silent partner in the background, it speaks more of competence to me than a dude who's up front and centre Beyonceing all the time. Like, do you know what I mean? I don't know, Joe May. Am I making sense here? A fan is passionate, an employee is a corporate robot, mate. We've got to have passion, eh? You Googled it, Kenny. I love that, Kenny, that you guys are going away and doing your own research. I need to do more of that, clearly. No reasonable person would say risking his life from a few times. It just sounds a bit mad, doesn't it, Michael? I don't know anything. This is, as I was just thinking about I don't know. And fair play. You know what? Initially, when I heard Toto Wolff say I was calling the police, I was thinking, it's a bit much that. Calling the police, why? What for? And then quickly I understood that, listen, if George is getting abuse on the back of the comments that Lewis Hamilton has made and the reaction of his fan base, then you call the police. I don't know where this stop snitching thing comes. Call the police. If you feel like you need to call the police, then do you know what I mean? Why wouldn't you call the police? I don't hate Toto Wolff for calling the police to protect his team and his drivers. Why? I'm sad. The only point of contention I have as far as Toto Wolff's behaviour over the past 24, 48 hours is, where was this Toto Wolff when Lewis Hamilton needed it, eh? Where was this type of vigour, this team principle that didn't hesitate to show his teeth. He's been meek and mild for the longest time, and I think that speaks to his personality. In fact, the meek and mild demeanour is a function of his personality even. But I just wanted him to be a bit more, I don't know, in 2021 in particular, when Christian Horner was massively on the front foot, I kind of wanted him to turn around his baseball cap and face down the opposition, the other protagonist, your rival Christian Horner. And he was a Jean Todt, wasn't he? He was a silent participant, agreeing for large part of 2021 to go along with Stewart's decisions, and that's noble and meaningful in that sense, but it's not the strongest of the species that survives, but the most adaptable to change now. And this, for me, epitomises the downfall of the empire that is Mercedes. Visu, you're too kind, mate. Dragon Ball. Techie, eh? I do want to get some more Dragon Ball references in. I've started to lean deep into my WWE lot, using lots of The Rock. You are a function of the content that you consume. WTF is Sting going to do? Toto, grow up. Macon, my preferred managerial formula is get a really good media person to speak on your behalf and a manager of the issues so emails are dealt with quickly and decisively. I don't hate that. Delegate to better people, right? The best managers that I've ever come into contact with, they've been acutely aware of their own blind spots, and so they hire accordingly and delegate to other people's strengths. What else? I was listening to the chap's name, Andrea Stella, team principal of McLaren. Again, another Beyond the Grid podcast with legend of F1 Tom Clarkson. I think we talked about this before, Ray. I was so impressed, as I was about James Allison's showing this week past on the Beyond the Grid podcast. Andrea Stella, the humanity. Listen, if you ever doubted that McLaren are going places, just go and listen to that podcast. There's a line that he talks about. We're talking about trying to make the car quicker. How do you go about that was the question, if I remember correctly. And Andrea was, Tom Clarkson was pushing him to cite different parts. And Andrea was like, you're thinking about it the wrong way. But what we need to focus on is not outcomes. Not any one particular part will bring us success. What we need to focus on is ensuring that we have the parameters and the conditions within which we can succeed and increment for success. Who is this dude talking like this? Process focused as opposed to outcomes. As soon as he said that, I was like, sold. Like, let me purchase my McLaren cap now. And I've talked fairly disparagingly about them before on the last lap with the legend that is Tomo and Peter on pole for McLaren F1 TV, or McLaren Fan TV even. Like, I was like, I've poo-pooed McLaren. Listening to Andrea Stella on Beyond the Grid, I was an instant convert. Like, if you have a team principal that thinks and speaks like that, especially when English isn't his first language even, mate, good luck beating that guy. Once he gets his lead time and starts to good luck beating that guy. Like, McLaren are coming. I'm converted. Like, fully bought member, fully paid up member of the McLaren fan club now. Like, with those drivers as well. Oh, the humanity. What are we doing? French Bonapartists. Do you think banning Russian players made the sport popularity old Soviet Union countries less, even though... oh no, I need to finish reading that. That's getting techie. Do you think banning Russian players made the sport's popularity in old Soviet Union countries less, even though chess is Russia's favourite and political game? They never done such acts in Formula One. Blimey, French. That's a question and a half, mate. I don't know if I've got cerebral dollars sufficient to address that with the seriousness that's needed. So, but to broaden it out ever so slightly, French, listen, Nikita Mazepin wasn't a brilliant guy, nor was he a brilliant driver, but did he deserve, without getting too political, can you punish the driver vicariously for the sins of his home country? Is that fair? Non-rhetorical question. You guys let me know in the chat. For all of Maximilian, for all of Nikita Mazepin's indiscretions and parties and filming dodgy things on his phone and publishing them on Instagram, was it fair that his F1 career came to it? If he was a brilliant driver, as an example, and didn't make so many errors, would it be fair then, in this hypothetical world, that his F1 career was ended because of a conflict that his home country got? I don't know. I don't know the answers to those questions. You know what I mean? It's a really, really good question. And chess. Are we going to get into chess, French? Mate, Garry Kasparov. He was one of my heroes as a youngster. I remember running home, I want to say 95 maybe. I remember running home to watch Nigel Short play Garry Kasparov in the World Chess Championship, and instantly I became hooked. It was like studying games and Karpov and like all of the old greats, like starting to ingest lots of chess. But I digress, man. Too much chess talking and not enough F1 talking. French. McLaren says me too. Macon, that's your strengths. One word, delegate. That is your strength. You're supposed to delegate according to your strengths and your weaknesses as a manager, right? That's my understanding. Rock says MBS should take pointers in the chairman of Augusta National. Oh, the humanity. Rock, how very dare you? I feel like I've done MBS a bit of a disservice here. He was allowed to drive under a neutral flag. He declined. Visual, I did not know this. Fact check complete. I did not know this. But even then, Visual, how techie is that? If as a prerequisite you had to abandon the flag of your home nation and drive under a neutral flag, if that was a condition, a prerequisite even, is that fair? If you had to choose, I mean, Nikita Mazepin, if he did that, would he not be shunned by his countrymen? Would he not lose his Russian pimp car? I don't know. It's techie. Yeah, it's been a minute. Let's smash the like. Lazy, you guys are legends. Nigel Short played against Kasparov in '93. There we go, French. So I remember it being the '90s. I remember running home to watch the games. It was just as I was getting into chess and learning about the King's Gambit and Queen's Sacrifice and like Indian defense and the Sicilian. And I'm not good anymore. Like I was good back in the day when I was about 11 years old, but no, not so anymore. But that was the time. I was watching a lot of chess. I still watch it from time to time, a bit of chess. Magnus. There's another couple that I watch. There's loads of serious chess YouTubers, isn't there? Is it the Bottas sisters? There's that guy as well. I do find myself every once in a while, YouTube will suggest a chess video and I'll watch it. Like they go to New York and hustle the chess hustlers. Like I do like a bit of as a brown man born in England, I don't give a F. I'm ditching the flag. Visual. Listen, do you know how techie what you've just said is? Visual, we're gonna have to talk about that another day. It's very, very techie that. Visual, I can't, you know. This is chaos. Carlson is my guy. He's a madman. He's a legend, isn't he? Different level. The Max Verstappen of chess. Visual, we'll touch on that another day. The dichotomy that you are presented with as far as, you know, it's too techy. We'll do it. Visual, I promise you. You raise a brilliant point and we will touch on it at some. I feel like I've talked about this when talking about Lewis. The internal conflict, right? The amount of fires that he's fighting as far as like cultural and F1 and coming into McLaren and having to be clean shaven and not being able to be himself, whistling Vivaldi and then dealing with dog whistle races. Like, mate, we'll get into it visual at some point. I'm telling you, it's a worthwhile subject topic, but I feel like I'm in too deep. It's too, It's too chaotic. There are another couple of points I wanted to touch on, F1 wise before I run away. Magnus Carlsen is a madman. Less inspiring of empathy, Vladius. Oh my gosh, Vladius. Nikita was a bit too close to the fire. His story is less inspiring than that of other Russian athletes. But should that matter, Vladius? I hear you, but that's for us, right? I'm not sure that should that matter? If you're talking about ending someone's career, the human torpedo, he was a chaos merchant, wasn't he? Go on then, let me tell you about this quickly before I run away. Because it is I hope you guys, these Friday streams, ask Peter what he thinks. I know. If you see on Peter's channel, he's still got like the I stand with Ukraine hashtag on all of his videos. I've never spoken to Mr. Windsor about that, but I think he feels quite strongly, let's say. And fair. It's above my pay grade, I think. I don't know enough about the politics. Briatore. Right, chap. I'm going to run away. Can you believe, as a noddy accountant, that I've got to go away and... Oh my gosh, let me talk about this finally. I know I've talked about Toto ad infinitum, but I've just stumbled across the quote verbatim. Formula One team Mercedes calls the police after an anonymous email about sabotaging Sir Lewis Hamilton. Sabotaging Sir Lewis Hamilton critically. Team boss Toto Wolff said verbatim, quote, "I would like to say to all those crazy people out there, go to a psychiatrist." What do you think about that, chap? He's going ham, isn't he? No pun intended. And I think he's got to be a bit careful there. Look, if indeed it is a fan of Lewis who sent that, surely there is a lesson to be learned on several different parts, right? By several different related parties. First among whom are Sir Lewis Hamilton. Was Sir Lewis irresponsible in his comments? Even if he didn't do it deliberately, he will know his power. He will understand the fundamental nature of his fan base, that they will go to bat for him each and every single time, to a fault sometimes. So if he stands before the world's press and media and starts talking in those terms, I don't know what's going on. Sometimes I don't know if they're turning down the end of the car, or like my tyres didn't have to. Lewis, you are a very intelligent human being, the goatiest F1 driver who's ever put on a set of Nomex in F1. Like, you know what time it is as far as your fan base. Your fan base are going to hear that and latch onto it, because that's what they will be thinking already. 8-1 as versus George head-to-head in qualifying. I was thinking the same thing, right? When you look at that stat, even though the margins on each and every single occasion are very, very fine, as a Lewis Hamilton fan, having seen his brilliant Singapore 2018, 2007 round the outside of Fernando Alonso, first race, turn one, like, you look at 8-1 and it doesn't pass the smell test. You need to dive deep and put your confirmation bias and partisanship on the shelf temporarily to understand the story and analyze for the root cause, right? Like, it's not it's not an easy thing, this. Like, fandom is like, extreme fandom is irrational in its nature. You can't help but believe, like I said to a commenter the other day, or today even, that faith is belief without evidence. And Lewis Hamilton, in that sense, is a religion. He inspires this almost like religious faith, this unerring devotion. It is devotion, that's the word. Like, and that speaks to him as a mainstream crossover star, and how he's been excellent for so many years now, and his personality and his good, like, do you know what I mean? But then he's got to understand there is a responsibility that comes with that sort of power and loyalty and devotion. And I think what that looks like is not necessary. And to be fair to Lewis, I've said on many occasions, and I'll reiterate for the here and the now, that Lewis, 9 times out of 10, I can only remember, I'll count on like 2 fingers, the times when I've heard Lewis come out before the world's press and media, make a PR misstep. Maybe it's because I'm black, as an example. And again, citing the Ali G joke back in the day. Maybe the stewards are victimising him at Monaco because of the colour of his skin, as an example. Now, maybe he felt like that, but as far as what good PR looks like, that wasn't it. In fact, some might argue that that sentence, that phrase, was diametrically opposed to what good PR looks like. But that's the exception that almost proves the good PR Lewis Hamilton rule. 9 times out of 10, he understands, and he traverses this PR line, right? Not too cold, not too hot, just warm. That's Lewis's PR stance. Like he nails it because he's acutely aware of visual. Look what you've got. Look at the road that you've got me going down visual. He's acutely aware of his commercial value and the downside ramifications as far as that. As one of the greatest drivers that there has ever been in the sport of F1, and the only one that looks like him. The downside ramifications and the risks are never far in that sense. He would have understood firsthand on the back of one of those comments, on the back of Liegate. There are absolutely more downside ramifications for him than there would be, say, like a Pierre Gasly. And Lewis will be acutely aware of that, which makes it even more damning that he would say that now. Like another driver could say that and we just be like, whatever. Like Max as an example, bless him, however much of a brilliant driver he is, whenever his fans come out and like this extremist fan, and again, I don't want to typecast fans here because that's a very slippery slope, is it not? But whenever you remember when Max's fans were getting, like the fundamentalist ones were getting a bit serious, and Max was like, listen, I can't tell the fans what to do. Lewis can't say it. Like, do you know what I mean? All drivers are created equally, but some are created more equal than others. And Lewis will be aware of that. And again, that's what makes me I'll say this. I think Lewis will rue, especially now on the back of all the online abuse that George is getting, on the back, probably as a function of some of the things that Lewis has said over the past couple of race weekends. I think Lewis now will rue more than ever. Maybe not the substance of what he said. Sometimes you've got to speak to you. Sometimes you need to speak your truth, right? I mean, yeah, it's damaging for your mental health if you just bottle everything up. So maybe not necessarily what Lewis said, the substance of it, but the tone and the knock-on effect for George. And that's why I think Lewis quite rightfully came out and called for calm today, right? Because what you definitely don't, as competitive as they are, there's going to be rancor between Messrs Hamilton and George between now and the end of the season. They're competitors. George is a killer. Lewis absolutely will want to nail, what are we, 8-1 in quali now. Before the 24th race, you bet your bottom dollar that Lewis will want to turn that round. Qualifying. Do you know who these F1 drivers are? Their fundamental constitution. They've lived for the longest time, not just in their heads, but on track as the fastest one. Lewis too. Who's been faster than Lewis? Ever? This is a paradigm shift, a black swan of an instance occurrence even. He will be very keen on rectifying that. There is a score in Lewis Hamilton's mind to settle, but yet and still, he won't want his fans to be abusing another driver, and definitely not his teammate still in the final year of his career with Mercedes, George Russell. You can't. Poor form. Lewis would hit the like button. He absolutely would. Lazy Jomo. Is it because I'm Spanish or Mexican? It can happen in any walk of life, but best to steer away from that narrative. Oof. Jomo. No me di cuenta. No me di cuenta, Jomo. I didn't realise. For as long as Hamilton promotes LGBTQ, oh my gosh, I cannot read that out. Rodri Real. You will never win a championship. Live it. Mate, as much as I'd love to engage, listen, we'll have a drink one day and we can talk about that, but I can't. In 2024, look, as a chap who's grown up in a Jamaican household, if there's one thing that I've learned not to do or be, is judgmental of other people's life choices. I can't, like religion and whatever, I cannot. I don't know enough. I'm just a man, and I'm trying to be a good father and a good husband and a good son, a brilliant content creator. One day, maybe, as brilliant an F1 mind as I can be, rubbing shoulders with the likes of Mr. Peter D. Windsor and Shez and Baxter, who are infinitely more well versed in the subject than I. But who am I then? On the back of the aforementioned, how can I judge somebody for their life choice? I'm not perfect. Cast the first stone. I definitely cannot be the one to be throwing any stones. You're having a laugh. Like, oh, hybrid. You got to use the face stickers, mate. That's part of being a member. And if you want to become a member, listen, I appreciate that. Like, got loads of members already in the chat just killing it. Vince, I didn't think Lewis even needs to try. There are some LH cultists. There are some. You know what, though? Look, Lazy, let me say this as we close. What did Vince say? I need to read it if he's spitting hot flame. Did Lewis set his fan base on his teammate? No, Vince. He didn't. But Lewis will be aware, like I said already, right? Lewis has to be aware of the power that he wields. He's an F1 driver. He's one of the greatest ever. He has a fan base that is devoted. It's like religious settings, nearly. It feels a lot like that. When you listen to like the turn of phrases, and I don't want to typecast because, again, no fan base is a monolith. I'll say that. I'll preface everything I'm about to say, but when you hear the levels of devotion that Lewis Hamilton inspires, he, as an F1 driver, 7-time champion, man who will absolutely be a face on the Mount Rushmore of F1, Lewis has to know, he has to be acutely aware of the power that he wields. He has to be aware. Like, it's like Beyonce, right, and the Beehive or whatever. As soon as she has beef with another, like Kerry Hilson or something, like it's like a trigger for online AB. It just is. Whatever that's worth. Which nation's police they call the I don't know. Normally Susie got the French police onto the FIA, didn't they? I don't know. McLaren. I'm just realising that we can use visual. Alonso brought up. Is it because he's Spanish? Earlier this year, after he was punished for Russell's poor concentration and a hard-fought battle, are we going to do visual coming up with the hot questions as we round third base? So that anti-Spanish thing, I feel like, yeah, I feel like Alonso is misplaced. Alonso, as smart as he, again, similar criticism I will leverage at him that I've just leveraged at Lewis, right? As brilliantly intelligent an F1 mind, a racing mind as Fernando Alonso is, I would expect more from him as far as his voicing his discontent as far as a steward's decision. There is a way to do that, right? And it's easy to use those ism terms. It's super easy. I was reminded, you know what it reminded me of when Alonso spoke about that? It was reminded of when Serena Williams was losing, and I love me some Serena Williams. Are you having a laugh? Greatest woman athlete ever. Like, beyond a shadow of that, in my humble opinion. Serena is like God tier of athletes ever, men or women. But I was really disappointed in Serena at the US Open when she was losing. And that was a match that she could have won against Naomi Osaka. One of the great ones is Serena, for the avoidance of doubt. Before I'm about to say this, I can hear that blasphemy door opening again, by the way. But I was just really disappointed in Serena at the US Open when she had she was losing to Naomi Osaka, had the opportunity to turn that round, was plenty good enough as far as her talent, notwithstanding the fact that she was getting to the latter stages of her tennis career. And then rather than buckle down and grit her teeth and grind your way to a victory, as she's done so many times before, she got frustrated and started to vent her anger at the umpire. And that's whatever. Like, people do that. John McEnroe made a career out of it, as near as makes no difference. That happens. But to then start shouting at the umpire that he's been... No, I can't. How could the umpire be... The umpire might be sexist, but in this context, how can he be sexist against Serena Williams when she's playing another woman in Naomi Osaka? This makes no sense. I really, really lost a lot of it. That time in particular, as much as I still love Serena Williams, when I heard that, I was just like, Serena, this is like Naomi Osaka is a woman of colour on the opposite side of the net. So how? And the things that that umpire, who is a hard nose of an umpire, but the things that umpire accused Serena of doing, getting coached, the coach came out afterwards and said, yeah, he was coaching. Everything that the umpire punished Serena for in the game was true and fair and representative. Ergo, when Serena cites the isms, misogyny, sexism, she makes a mockery of real because misogyny and sexism are real things. We're getting too techie now, but as we round third base, I'll indulge it very quickly. These things are real in the world, right? They exist. Like, misogyny isn't a thing that, like, to speak to your wife or your daughter or whoever, like that. Misogyny is a real thing in the world, and definitely in sports. But when you do the boy who cried wolf thing and attribute that as blame, as culpable for a circumstance that it has no place being, you do real instances of sexism and misogyny and racism a disservice, because those real instances, to Joe Blogs, Johnny Come Lately, whoever, that the risk is that people see them as the boy who cried wolf. Because I remember Serena, when she did it and cited it when she had no place to. That's the issue. That's the... Why are we getting so techie, chat? What happened to this being an F1 channel? But like, listen, we've got to talk about sports. Kenny says with Serena, the issue was that with the Serena thing, was because she was not allowed to be coached, where the men could and still are they? I think them's the rules across both, Kenny. Anyway, do you know what? It's techie, leave the hybrid. I do that sometimes. It discredits the experience of There you go, Vladius. Look at that. Vladius took the words out my mouth. Never use 5 words, and you can use 50. That's the Cameron F1 mantra. Let me read that out again for the avoidance of doubt. Vladius says, Serena discredits the experience of real victims. Legend. Forgot my last comment, Cam. Where's your last comment, McLaren? Who's got the best? Oh my gosh, McLaren. I can't juxtapose that comment with visuals comment. You know what I mean? Or Vladis's comment even. Techie. Visual, you're too kind, sir. Do you think Alonso wore his green Aston Martin suit when he Hulk smashed Taylor? Johnny Herbert shouldn't be a steward targeting Alonso. Oh, the humanity visual. Right, look. Okay, so what visuals are leading to, for those of you who don't know? There was a time back in the day, I want to say, I'm not even going to pick a year because I don't know. But when Fernando Alonso was driving for McLaren the second time round, he's driven twice, right? The first 2007, yeah, he drove for 1 year before he moved on to Ferrari, I think, or Renault. Anyway, whatever. 2007, then he had a second stint at McLaren. The second stint, all that he did, listen, the car wasn't brilliant, but the engine was worse, and all he did was moan about the engine. GP2 engine, he said famously, because he was lacking so much power on the rest of the field. However, around that time, because of the ills of the car, people do the availability heuristic thing, right? And look at Alonso's performances, or look at where Alonso was finishing and just write him off, even though he was still a brilliant driver, but he just was driving a really, really bad car. Blame the driver for the ineptitude of the machinery that he's driving. F1 fans do that a lot, even F1 aficionados sometimes. And that was the case that they gave Fernando Alonso over during that time, that second stint at McLaren. I think he got injured. Visual, did he not? He got injured, and he was this was around the time when he was doing like the Triple Crown, and he was driving it like he was kind of dotting back and forth, and there was a lot of rumour about Fernando retiring, and I think he got injured and wanted to come back and give it, as Fernando Alonso always wants to do. He wanted to come back and give it to the detractors, but the FIA ruled that, because I think it was his hand that he did, some injury he had, and the FIA ruled that he wasn't fit or healthy enough to race. Even though he'd arrived, I think it was in Bahrain, even though he'd arrived and was ready to go and desperately wanted to, the FIA inspected him and said, you're not ready, you're not match fit, Fernando, you can't race. And Johnny Herbert had done the availability heuristic thing and thought, Foster, the light button's underneath here, I think, if you're watching on your phone. Johnny, again, pundit, legend, truthsayer, one of the real ones, Johnny Herbert is, who talks. He doesn't really care for, similar to James Allison, he'll say something that could get him sacked because he just speaks. Joker in The Dark Knight, right? No filter, just gives it you raw and unfiltered. And Johnny, I think, speculated, I think incorrectly, that Alonso was done. And that owing to his poor performances at the time, the GP2 engine, you've got to wrap up into there and normalise for that if you're gonna appraise Alonso's performance fairly. But some would say that Johnny Herbert just fell for the ills and the ineptitudes of the car that Alonso was driving. Again, blame the driver for the failing of his car. That's what some people would say Johnny Herbert was doing. But he'd said something, he threw out a soundbite, as Johnny Herbert used to do. Listen, Alonso should just retire. And Alonso got wind of that. And when Johnny was doing a piece with one of his co-presenters, Alonso nabbed him, didn't he? Alonso grabbed him and was like, what did he say to him, Visual? He said to him, and you guys can YouTube this and fact check me, but he grabbed him. I think he said, I did a video on it. Look, if you search the channel, there's a video called, I think it's called Top 10 Most Controversial Interviews. And I've got the clip on there. I think Alonso grabbed Johnny Herbert and said something like, you are now the commentator because you were never a champion. Yeah. And then they just rinsed Johnny Herbert. You're a commentator now because you were never a champion. You were never a champion, Johnny Herbert. You were never an F1 driver who had the potential or opportunity or had the ability to become a champion in your field. That's what Fernando Alonso was saying. Cut any deeper, Fernando. How cold is that of the chap? Like, what are we saying here? That was bonkers of Fernando to say. It was harsh, but it was fair because it was true. And that was Fernando biting back at Johnny for telling him and speaking ill of him in the media and saying that he should retire, right? Chaos. Oh, the humanity. Like it's mad. Oh, my accent, Foster or Johnny's. Johnny's got a bit of an accent, but he's a cheeky chappy, so he flits in and out of that. Yeah, you are not the champion, so you ended up as a commentator. The Spanish, I'm butchering that. Yeah, it's a legendary. Check it out on the channel. I think I called it top 10 controversial Indians, something like that. And ever since then, the rumor is that Johnny Herbert, as a steward now, like the two of them are one of these, right? They don't get on, and that any time Johnny Herbert is a steward, Fernando Alonso will find himself a penalty. I think we're talking about Australia, aren't we? Visual. Did he? I'm a champion. Un campione di. Un campione a sere. Did I'm trying to think. Was the penalty that Johnny Herbert gave Fernando Alonso at Australia? Listen, I think he was always going to get a penalty. I don't think he was unfairly done by. Like, listen, did he brake test George Russell? No. But was he being a bit dark arts? Absolutely. And listen, the FIA, if they're proper as a regulatory body, then they should never. What's the word that I'm looking for? Carlos Sainz said this again, so eloquently, much more eloquently than I ever could endeavour to. But Carlos said what the FIA should be doing is punishing on the process, not the outcome. And that's if Alonso has a case against the FIA in that instance at Australia, that's it. That's what he should have said. Not that they're anti-Spanish and Lewis will never get a... But like, say that the FIA should be penalising based upon the merits or otherwise of the instance. Like Checo Perez won a couple of races back at Miami. He should get a penalty. It doesn't matter whether he crashed into no one or crashed into everyone. That the loss of control of the car was the same. Well, all of a sudden because he doesn't crash into somebody, he doesn't get a penalty. This is farcical. You lose control of the car, you get a penalty. If you lose control and crash into somebody, then you get a greater penalty. Like, surely it should be. Anyway, it's too long to solve for the ills of the FIA, the regulatory body that have been nothing over the past 5 to 10 years, if not consistently inconsistent. We'd be here another 60 minutes, if not more, trying to solve for their nonsense. Vladius, he was playing in the grey area. The rules are vague in terms of their interpretation, and they even need to sort that out, Vladius. Why are the rules written like that? Where are the terms and definitions? What is an apex? What is an overtake even? Rewrite the rules, put terms and definitions up front so we all understand. Brand new fans who have come to the sport via the Drive to Survivation phenomenon. They don't know what's going on. Like, do you remember when Lewis put it on pole and then they struck off the lap? Like, what was it? Lando was on pole and then they struck his lap off because of a track infringement. And then Lewis was on pole, but he wasn't because Lando's lap got reinstated by virtue of the fact that the FIA had made a mistake because then it shouldn't struck off. Ordinarily at a different track, you would have struck off his lap for a track infringement, but not at that track because he's deemed not to. What are we doing? All right, you see how even as I'm talking, it's nonsensical, right? It feels like some sort of like logic puzzle where, you know, like stairs where you just go round and round and you end up. This is nonsense. FIA, sort out your live chat. Like, it's, yeah, they absolutely keep people confused, lazy. What's the point? Reinstate the lap. Like, what are we doing? Yeah, that's another one, Vince. Reinstate the lap before. Why? What? Because Zhou hadn't crossed some arbitrary line yet. Carlos Sainz gets a second bite at the cherry, a second chance. He's not. What are we doing? Crash, you crash, chap. Like, done. There are no second chances. Well, what in the meritocracy is this? There are no second chances in F1. What is an F1 car, Loki? I've been reading the F1 dictionary. It gets techie. Go on, I'm going to read out this last one and I'm running away. Because I do actually, listen, it's 9:15 and one has to log back on and do work. Oh, the humanity. Kenny says that was the cause. It was a wet race. I know what race you took. Was it Suzuka? China's. I can't remember. It's too late. Velvet Vovo says Volto. Says, here's what I don't understand. Why do you clickbait? Go on, let's talk about this, Velvet. Bring it on. Let's go. Here's what I don't understand. Why do you clickbait people with titles such as Windsor says Lewis is sabotaged, but he actually said was the opposite? What's that all about? Go on then, Velvet. This is really, really good. I'm glad that I take this as the final question. Because listen, sometimes, like if it's respectful in its modes of discourse or it's content creation or it's F1, I will bring it and I will welcome it each and every single time. Velvet, fact check me. I try not to be, there will be poetic license in some titles sometimes because YouTube is a very competitive space. The beastification of content creation is a real thing, right? That being said, there is an extent to which I can use poetic license without being disingenuous, without disenfranchising the fan base that I try to serve. Velvet, check this out. If I remember, and you guys can go and watch back the video and call me out if I'm lying. Mr. Windsor, the question that I pitched to Peter was, the fan base think Lewis Hamilton's being sabotaged. To that, Mr. Windsor, you say, and then Peter laughed, didn't he? I used it as part of the intro. And Peter said, I say, if Mercedes sabotaged Lewis Hamilton, it was when they signed George Russell. That's the truth. So if there is a time when they sabotaged him, that was the time. Now listen, I'd love to put that in a title, but it's too long. Like if you that entire sentence, if I was to put that in quotation marks and then just, it would be too long. You wouldn't even see the end of it on your phone. So I had a smidgen, a sprinkle of poetic license, but I'll never say something that, like, it was words to those effects that Peter said. It was a good title. He didn't say that Mercedes he kind of did. If they sabotaged him, it was this. So he kind of, I think you're being overly harsh, Velvet. There are times when I'll leverage poetic license with a type, but I kind of, this is YouTube. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Like if nobody, Mr. Beast always says it right. If nobody clicks the video, then nobody will watch. So you gotta be creative. Peter Windsor, how Mercedes really yeah, there you go. Kenny, what's wrong with that? Kenny, you've nailed it. Thank you so much, sir. Peter, that's exactly what he said. See, people, right, go on then, Velvet. We're going to address this because the scorched earth incoming. You're right, Vince. I have to go scorched earth. Availability heuristic is a cognitive dissonance where people basically choose to remember what's most vivid in their memory instead of looking at the totality of the picture. I was victim of it myself just then. Called me out and I felt like I was guilty. Kenny, thank you so much. It wasn't that one, says Kenny, was not clear. Thank you. Prosecution. Not guilty. You don't need to defend your title. Sometimes we'll get a bit techie and a bit marginal, but this is the, do you know what I mean? If you're not rubbing, you're not racing. But yeah, you got to, yeah, I agree with that. Some people, when they're lazy, you've nailed it. Your titles and thumbnails bring me in. That's Loki. This is the game. Gotta like, not always, not too much. Like I can see there are loads of like AI channels out there to give you a peek behind the fourth wall. There are loads of AI channels out there that are like, Lewis stuff's like I won't go that far, but there is YouTube is a dance of sorts. It's a dating game. You gotta showcase your best self as a video, and sometimes there will be an element of creative license involved in that. Next title, let's get techie over humanity. People will click Byron, people will not click that. I'm too deep in the game as far as Yeah, too many deliberate hours practice. They will not, honestly. If you see, I'll give you a good example, since again we're peeling back the fourth wall, I'll give you guys some insight. If a Lewis Hamilton video, instant virality, right? Decent thumb, decent title, it just goes bonkers. A Carlos Sainz video, you saw me talking about Carlos Sainz this morning, imminent announcement. That's what Carlos Sainz said at the drivers' press conference yesterday. Nobody cares. I talked about, listen, again, this is a brilliant example. Somebody said, oh, you talk about is Lewis. I hadn't talked about Lewis for about 6 or 7 videos consecutive. People will just say whatever they want to say, evidence-based or otherwise, right? At this point, my shoulders are sufficiently broad. What's going on, Bruce Doug? You're right. Hope you're well, sir. Oh my gosh, Paul says. Yeah, like I spoke about, I was amazed. I've been amazed over the past couple of weeks by Carlos Sainz and his articulate nature, right, and the way that he thinks and his racing brain and that podcast that he did. We spent 30 minutes diatribing for it, right, deep diving and appraising it. Nobody cares about that video. It's in those videos where you'll see like your archetypal AI F1 content creation channel won't talk about that because it's not worth their while. That's how you'll see if you want to differentiate from like the real from the fake. The Carlos Sainz, the channel that talks about Carlos Sainz, or Tomo, bless him. Tomo made a brilliant video about F2. F2, like he's diversified his portfolio, right? Like the video. You guys are legends. Listen, I'm gonna run 30 minutes before qualifying. We shall be here, as always, waxing lyrical, using 50 words when one should be using 5, as characterizes and epitomizes the channel. Am I late to the party? Thoughts on P1 in FPT? You are late to the party, sir. I don't want to place too much stock in that. The trend is your friend until there is a bend. But as far as Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton's concerned, FP3 is a walk in the park for them. But it's not a pace session, is it? Qualifying, this is where you do. I don't care about these vanity runs. 1:13.264. Yeah, that's all good. But it's worth nothing if you can't translate it in qualifying. And I'm praying for once, as a Lewis Hamilton fan, that Lewis can do it right. James Allison has spoken about this. He needs to adapt his style. That it will be hot potentially tomorrow unless it's raining. So that'll mean he'll need to manage his tyres over the course of one hot lap. Can he do it? Of course he can. Will he do it? A very different proposition, because he hasn't been doing it over the past few races, has he? Got to manage it, not hustle it along too much. Again, the car and tyre combination is important. The moment I saw Toto after this, oh no, really, are we going to get into, no, I cannot. I am lazy, Doug. Yeah, no, I didn't see the video of Toto celebrating in 21. I know that there was one, but I definitely saw Valtteri Bottas doing the somersault into the pool, and I definitely didn't like that, I'll be honest with you. He's entitled to celebrate. He's had a brilliant tenure with Mercedes, and that was his final race with the team. He can do that if he wants to. He doesn't have to feel, this is like outrage, right? You can't be vicariously. There's so many things about which one can get outraged. Yeah, I can't feel, if I'm not outraged, I don't want to feel the outrage vicariously through someone else, right? I think that's nonsense. Fool's gold even. But yeah, I personally didn't like the Bottas thing. Fair play to him. If he wants to do that, then he can. Did you know MBS came in Abu Dhabi? Did he? Can he? I've got a really good story about MBS and Abu Dhabi 21. I've told it before on the channel, but I don't. About stewards. We'll talk about it next time during the race. But the timing, read the route. Yes, Vladius. I concur, mate. The timing, read the room. Vladius, mate, where's your YouTube channel? Spitting hot bars and fire today, chat. Like, that's incredible. Right, I'm going to run away. You guys have been legends, as always. Charles Edward, far too kind, sir. Thank you so much. Listen, grateful to Charles and all of you that support, but Charles in particular, because he's an absolute legend and far too kind. That has been another live stream. We'll see you 30 minutes before qualifying, where we will diatribe for all things F1, talk news, go back and forth, argue, mode of discourse, communication, everything circa F1. Look at me talking Spanish. Why do I even flip into Spanish like lots of you can understand for no reason? Because I'm a joker. Thank you so much. See you 30 minutes before qualifying tomorrow. Between now and next time, as always, remember to look but never stare.